Hello friends, this is my first video and my new series of video tutorials on CodeIgniter framework. In this video we will cover some basics of CodeIgniter framework. We will also cover basics of model view controller workflow of CodeIgniter framework. We will also show bunch of library which CodeIgniter framework uses, and we will also cover workflow of CodeIgniter and how to start work with CodeIgniter framework. Before we are going to start discussing on CodeIgniter framework, first we think on why should we use this CodeIgniter framework. If you wanted to work with any PHP framework and if you have good knowledge of PHP object-oriented programming, then you can easily learn and understand this framework. This is because this framework mainly build on core PHP and this framework mainly work on model view controller workflow concept. CodeIgniter is a powerful PHP framework with a very small footprint, built for developers who need a simple and elegant toolkit to create full-featured web applications. CodeIgniter use Model View Controller framework, or in simple words it is a model view controller. In CodeIgniter framework, controller gather logic from models and display in view. This is the basic concept of this CodeIgniter framework, in which business logic is make in controller, database query operation done in models, and HTML code or browser-side display is done in view. This way model view controller workflow has been work. The other reason why should we use CodeIgniter framework for our application, this is because of its user guide. CodeIgniter framework provides rich user guide and it is easily available on its website, and in that guide you can find all information related to CodeIgniter function, library or even helper. You can also download this user guide and you can also read it offline also. CodeIgniter provide the best user guide which we have never seen before. Now friends, we have show how to install CodeIgniter framework. So first we have to download CodeIgniter framework from its website. Friends, we have to download this file, and this framework size is only 10% of Zend framework, and CodeIgniter framework is the smallest sized framework between which are currently available in the market, like Zend, Laravel, Cake PHP and blah blah blah. CodeIgniter is the lightweight PHP framework, and CodeIgniter application run very fast and smoothly. After download CodeIgniter framework, now we have put this framework into my WAMP www folder, and in this folder we have another folder tutorial, and here we have put unzip file which we have download and rename this folder to CodeIgniter. Now friends, I have show you how to run CodeIgniter application. So for this we have go to browser, and here we have write localhost / tutorial folder name / and folder name of CodeIgniter application, which is also CodeIgniter, and press enter. Here we can see that welcome page of CodeIgniter framework. This way we can run the CodeIgniter framework application. Now friends, we have discussed file structure of this CodeIgniter framework. In this framework there is mainly application, system and user guide folder are there. In application folder mainly we will store our PHP code which we will write for develop for our application. How to and where to write PHP code in application we will describe you later. In system folder all framework core part are stored into this folder. If you want to interested to the code of the CodeIgniter framework, then you can find whole framework code part are stored into this system folder. In this folder you can find the core part like different class on which CodeIgniter framework. You can find these things into this folder. And last, in user guide folder you can find the complete user guide of this CodeIgniter framework. You can easily find the user guide with framework folder. You can read and learn lots of things from this user guide. In this guide you can find information about all CodeIgniter function, library and even helper also. This all things you can find into this user guide. You can read this guide offline also. Friends, if you develop any application by using this CodeIgniter framework, then you have to store your all code into this application folder. So now I show you main folder of this framework and where you should store which information. In application, their first most important folder is config. In config folder you can see different PHP file. Now I have show you which file is used for which purpose. Your first file is autoload.php. This file specifies which systems should be loaded by default. This file helps us to by default load any CodeIgniter packages or libraries or helper. Suppose you want to load database libraries by default when system load, then you can do these things here. Then after rather important file is config.php. Under this config.php file you can define the base URL of your system, you can set the index page of your system, you can set the which characters you want to allow in your URL, you can also set session variables here. Other most important file is database.php. This file is used for database connectivity of your system. If you want to connect your system with database, then you have to specify the database connectivity information like host name, username, password and database name here. This file mainly used for database connectivity. In config folder other important file is routes.php. This file lets you remap query requests to specific controller functions. If you want to set the default controller of your system, then you have to set from here. After config folder, now we have moved to controller folder. In this folder we have store PHP file in which we have to business logic and store into this folder. More about CodeIgniter we will discuss in later video. In helper folder, suppose you want to use any outside class other than CodeIgniter framework class, then you can store into this folder and you can use into this CodeIgniter framework. Same way helper folder, in libraries folder you can also use any outside class other than framework class, you can store into this folder and you can use into this CodeIgniter framework. In models folder you can store model class in which you can write database query run code like insert update delete and select query code right into this model class and store into this models folder. And last folder is views. In this folder you can store HTML output file which send requests to controller and it gather information from model and send information back to this view file. This type of HTML file output file store into this folder. So this is the whole file structure of CodeIgniter framework. In this video tutorial we have made a discussion on some basic introduction of CodeIgniter framework. We have also discussed model view controller framework, how to run CodeIgniter application in browser. And we have also discussed file structure of this CodeIgniter framework. If you like this video, so please share this video with your friends, or even you can also share on social media also. Friends, you want to get more update of my video, so, friends, you can subscribe my YouTube channel. Friends, you can also like my Facebook page also, or you can also follow Webs Listen on Twitter.